Hello, everybody, and welcome to our monthly series of interviews with IIT alumni. Today, I'm honored to be with Professor Rakesh Agrawal, an IIT Kanpur alumnus, who is a Winthrop Eastone Distinguished Professor at the School of Chemical Engineering at Purdue University. Among his many, many honors in his distinguished career are the 2010 National Medal of Technology and Innovation awarded by US President Barack Obama. We are, as IITians, so proud of that. And then 2012, the Distinguished Alumnus Award at IIT Kanpur. Um, Professor Agrawal has BTech in Chemical Engineering from IIT Kanpur 1975, a Master's in Chemical Engineering at 1977 from University of Delaware, and a Doctor of Science from MIT in 1980. Well, without further ado, welcome, Rakesh. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you, Animesh. It is an honor to be on this side, but with you.
Excellent, excellent. I am so happy we are talking because I intend to, well, pull out a whole bunch of information, knowledge, and gyan from you for all of our audiences. As you can imagine, we have audiences who could be students in school, people who are undergrad in the IITs and elsewhere, people who are maybe pursuing graduate school, thinking about graduate school, maybe young faculty who are trying to build their own careers and beyond. So we're gonna maybe keep it chronological. Tell us a little more about your childhood. Where were you born? How was it being a child, studies and stuff?
Yeah, so I was born in a small town called Ara, which is close to Patna in Bihar, which is my maternal grandparents were there. And my father was from Mirzapur, which is very close to Banaras. That's where I spent early days when my father was going to BHU actually. And then he got a job in Oil Natural Gas Commission and ONGC, and then we moved around, but finally we settled in Dehradun. So when I was the schooling years were in Dehradun, so from grade 4th to 12th, I was in Dehradun. And it was when I was in the 12th grade, my just typical school, DA Winter College, it was, we all had a lot of fun. We would stand outside the classroom. There was no need to go to the class because teachers were not there. Okay. So life was cool, and but then as things moved, my father asked me to apply for the IIT entrance exam, and I was a very reluctant partner to it because only geniuses went to IITs, and that's what my class fellows would tell me. They even made fun of me because I filled the form for IIT entrance,
Wow.
and so I was kind of. But nevertheless, one factor to the other, and the end result was a very big surprise for me that I did get in, and here I am.
That is wonderful. That is wonderful. And so you knew about the IITs through your father. Tell us a little more about him. What was his occupation and such?
Yeah, so my father was actually a very accomplished individual. Like he was a geologist by training, and from when he at BHU, he got his bachelor's and master's in geology, and he joined OGC. But then he became a reservoir engineer, and a very accomplished one, by the way. He was a general manager in OGC, and he continued to even they continued to call him to advise on the technical aspects well late into his 70s actually. So 20 years even
Wow.
after his
Wow.
retirement, he was still on their thing. And he was a very accomplished photographer also. Like some of his he got a lot of national awards for his photography at the same time, and he some of his photographs are even outside India actually in different collections which he took. So very accomplished, very creative individual. And for me, he was a source of inspiration because he always taught me to do my best and achieve the best, okay, and solve impactful problems. That's what he would tell me all the time. So
Impact is
basically, he
indeed
told me that
something.
basically he told me when you are making laddu, don't put less sugar in it. Some chini kyun dalo, that's it.
Live life to the fullest, huh?
Yeah.
That's great. So let's go to the IIT days. What hostel were you at
I was
IIT?
in Hall 2 for the
Okay.
first 4 years of my stay there, and then I moved to Hall 1. Okay.
Mhm.
And it was a wonderful journey. A lot of wingmates, who were really who all very accomplished in their own ways.
Mhm.
And one of the things which I look back, when you're at IIT Kanpur, or any IIT for that matter, you don't realize the people with whom you are surrounded with, right? Because and what they will become once
Mhm.
in due course. And And that's one thing which I must say, like, when I left Dehradun that night, like the very first night when I got on the train to go to Kanpur, I really did not realize the momentous occasion actually, because that train journey, when I got up next morning and got down and went to IIT, I did not realize that for the rest of the life, like you're surrounded with really the smart people the world has to offer, the smartest folks. And suddenly, you come in and you're in a company of all the individuals who are in their own right, they're inspiring you at the same time. That competition is very positive, I think. Okay, it tells you, what you need to do to really excel. Like that. So I think it's a very healthy competition, and surrounded and I consider myself very lucky in that respect. So even beyond IIT, that even to this day today, being surrounded by some of the smartest people, which which planet Earth has to offer, is it's very synergistic because they enhance you, and and I think that's what I
That
would
is
say
so
about
true.
my friends at IIT Kanpur.
I, uh, that is so true. I think our peers at IIT definitely they sharpen us in a very good way. Let's stay for a moment towards the IIT entrance part of it. Chemical engineering sometimes, especially in modern days, with software becoming such a big thing, may not be thought as the cool and sexy
Mhm.
and amazing thing sometimes. I would disagree with it, having had friends who have done that. Tell us a little more about your decision process.
Yeah, so like when I got into IT, I really wanted electrical engineering. Okay, and but my father insisted that I take chemical engineering because he thought that you remember like in 60s and 50s, like petroleum era, like
Mhm.
chemicals were being developed,
Yeah.
polymers were invented. Like it was really a renaissance for
And he was
chemicals.
in ONGC. He was in the middle of
Yeah,
it.
yeah. So exactly, he was influenced by that. As a matter of fact, the that time the IIT director Mutana, who was in the interview board, he even made joke of me, like, why aren't you taking electric? Because that's what I had filled in the form. Why aren't you
Gotcha.
taking it? Why are you taking chemical? And when I told him my father has asked me, so he started laughing actually, and I was very timid. I got scared, like, that you would do something to me, So that's how I became chemical engineers. But I tell you what, like, after all these years, like I think chemical engineering, I think is you're right. But by the time I finished my PhD. I think chemical engineering entered in one of the most boring era, actually, I would say,
I
like,
see.
because, it becomes kind of mature, and so forth. But I think in the last 5, 10 years, like it is changing again. I think, how we will manufacture chemicals from 30 years from now will be very different than we do it today. And
And I'm going to come to that in a moment
yeah,
because there's definitely something there which I want to hear.
yeah.
Slowing you down just a little bit, what were you up to apart from studying on campus? Were you playing any sports or something, or are you full on bookworm mode with your
No,
classmates?
I was a
How was
bookworm
it?
actually. I must say that first 2 semesters I was like drinking water from a fire hose.
Mhm.
Okay, I was struggling because coming from a dear Winter College, where teachers, they're totally different education system where you mug things, you memorize things, you put it in a bucket, you invert your bucket in the exam, and you are
Mhm.
done. And suddenly the IITs were no longer that, and my class fellows were really, really accomplished, smart individuals. And the teachers would teach something in the class and ask something else in the exam. And it took me 2 semesters to get my bearings straight. And then, like, what happened was, like, in the third semester, I started to pick up, okay, because I learned the system, and some of my lab partners like Rashid Ansari and others, like, they really influenced me. I learned a lot from them. I saw him while doing lab experiments. I saw how he approached the problem. He was always constantly asking, but why it is, how it is, could it be improved, and what could be done? And that has had a lasting impression on me because so after the third semester, I would say I never had any problem in after that. But the first 2 semesters were very challenging. And what that did to me was I told myself that okay, I'm here to learn, and I'm going to focus on learning, and I just either I would hang around with my wingmates doing nothing, like just hang
Mhm.
around,
Mhm.
okay, or just chill, as they say today,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
or I would be busy with the books. And most of the time, I was trying to really learn and emulate actually more than the exams. So I was not as worried about the exams in those days. Now that I think about it, like by the time fifth, sixth semester came, because I thought that I would get good grades anyway. But the point at that point in time was more about learning the subject. Am I learning it? Like, and finding out what I really enjoyed and what I did not enjoy. Subject.
Yes,
So,
that is so important. how did you think of going to grad school?
So that's a good question. So as I said, like, so I was always for learning. By the time I reached my final year, I was very curious to learn. And the reason I thought about grad school, I thought that if I can get in a good department, not just any department, like, and then it'll be great because then I can learn from the masters, what it is all about, right? And so I was very keen on learning, and it just happened as the luck would have it. I got in a really one of the top-notch chemical engineering departments admission, and that was the reason I applied. Like, and also like most of the batchmates, they were that time were going to America. Okay,
Okay.
so that was another thing, and so I thought it would be cool to go to America. But I always wanted to go back to India, by the way, after my PhD. Okay. Like, and I tried pretty hard to go back. By
Hmm.
the way, I did not succeed, but nevertheless, the point is that at that point in time, I really wanted to learn and explore the world beyond the IIT campus. And we had like one or two professors who came from America. I remember we were surrounded with some of the really brightest professors of the department on the campus, and there were some Americans who came or taught us too, by the way. And those professors, when I saw what they knew, I was always sitting in the lecture halls and amazed. How can they know so much? Okay. And could I duplicate them was the
Yeah.
question I would ask myself quite often. And the only way you could do that was to do what they had done,
Hmm.
basically. And so actually, I was very fortunate. Some of the professors are like, are really big names in their own rights, actually. Like the Professor George Oberoi, Rao, the list goes on and on, like, and they were big
Oh,
influence.
Professor Rao was teaching you guys. Nice.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Not
I, I remember.
two courses for him.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. So let's. I'm going to come back to you and talk a little more about the whole how to get into grad school part because now you're on the other side admitting students and such. But let's continue a little more. You had not been out of India until you showed up in Delaware.
That's correct. Very correct.
Walk us through that. This is what 1975.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, so it was a unique experience, of course. Like, you're living in India for the first time. My mother was really like, she was I still have very, very deep regards for my mother. Like, she's really instrumental in making me what I am today. And she was very sad when I was living in India. Like, those are the days when there was no internet, there was
Yeah.
no WhatsApp, there was, you wrote a letter which arrived 2 weeks later.
Mhm.
And, if you talked on phone, it was
Oh,
$3.50 a minute, and your salary was $350 a month. You could not do that, right? So
yes.
it was a
Yeah.
big challenge. So I still like, she was so sad, like, and so when I was living at Delhi airport for the first time, I was just looking in her eyes and I was telling myself, am I doing the right thing, leaving her behind? But still, she was very supportive. She told me, just go, do your thing, fly your own wings. Okay, don't worry about me.
That's
So,
so sweet. Did you have siblings, younger siblings, or
yeah, I have a sister. Yeah,
I
okay,
see.
and but so it was very nice, like, of her to let me go. I think sometimes the parents hesitate to let their kids go, and because of their own personal feelings. And so I arrived. I was pretty. A lot of things happened in New York. I missed the bus. Someone pickpocketed me at JFK. So
Oh
there were a
my
lot of
God.
things which
Oh my
happened one
God.
after another.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
So wait, just freshly landed in America and you get pickpocketed
The very first
and,
day,
and you missed the bus.
even before I got on the bus, okay, to go to Port Authority bus terminal, okay,
Hmm.
at the JFK itself. And I got on the bus, and the bus driver says, okay, $10 for the ticket. And I look in my pocket, there's no wallet, right? And he's screaming at me, get down, And I said, no, no, wait a minute. My mother has divided my money in three parts. Okay, it was $500.
Hmm.
Three parts. I have another part where I can give you the money. Okay, I
Oh
still
my
remember
God.
that. Like, but a long story short, like, yeah, but I finally did reach to Delaware. But the student population there at Delaware was fabulous in chemical engineering. Okay, was fabulous. Like, the moment I reached there, they extended their welcome, like, as if I had never left India. Okay? And I still am very grateful to the students who were there that time. They immediately took me in. They took me in their apartment. They showed me how to get another apartment. They set me up. Okay, and so it was and then we continued that tradition, of course, with every batch which came afterwards. But I think the pipeline to welcome students and
Hmm.
settle them in that era was even more important than it is today, right? Because
Hmm.
Today, people have a pretty good idea where you are heading to, where you are
Yeah.
getting to.
Yeah. Yeah. So also you can you can order Indian groceries on Amazon or whatever. You can get
Yeah, yeah.
spices.
That time it was not there. As a matter of fact, one of my roommate was really good. Like, Manoj Bhinde, I still remember, like, he would make even gulab jamuns.
Oh, wow. Gulab
And
jamuns. Nice.
that was such a treat in those days, like a great friends. Like, we are still friends to this day. Like,
That is that is amazing. And so then 2 years, you're getting your master's in chemical engineering, and at some point you decide to go to MIT. How does that come about?
yeah, because what happened was I started to I changed my subject. I started to work on reaction engineering and catalysis from thermodynamics.
Hmm.
And the advisor with whom I started to work with, okay, he decided to go to MIT, okay, after I started my work, okay, and he took me along, and I was grumbling because I had to take qualifying exams again at MIT, okay.
Uh-huh.
I had just passed them at Delaware, and
I
I was
see.
really relaxed. And now suddenly I'm in another department and have to take these grueling qualifiers, like
Hmm.
exams and pass them. And so I was grumbling, but now that I look back, like, I must tell you, there was no way to fail. Okay. Because if I failed, then my advisor would not have had any graduate student. Right. Right. So, so,
Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
worked my PhD advisor was like Jimmy Way. Like, he was the head of the department at MIT, and then he later became dean at Princeton of engineering, and very accomplished individual in his own right. And to this date, I personally believe that when someone is a graduate student, they should pick advisors, okay, who are really accomplished individuals, I think, and I mean technically and professionally accomplished individuals. Like, so my master was Stan Sandler. He's a very famous chemical engineer, and the only reason I changed the subject was because first year when I wrote two papers with him, we went to Journal of Theoretical Physics, those papers. And I told myself, I'm a chemical engineer. How am I writing a paper for a physics journal? And so I have to change.
That's
So
interesting.
that was my stupidity, by the way, because Stan Sander was light years ahead you know, of his time. And I did not realize that. And but doesn't matter because I got to learn from two masters,
Hmm.
right? That's what
Yes,
matters, right?
which is so great. I'd like to kind of dwell on this point that you make, which is so true. People sometimes apply for grad school only looking at university rankings, whereas especially in the PhD program, I can tell you, my advisor, Professor Victor Prasanna, was a fellow of the IEEE
Yeah,
before I had joined him. He already was there, and it showed.
yeah.
I implicitly learned so much from him just to
Mhm.
see him do his thing.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
great to see that. And
Yeah,
you
your
got
point
two
is
of
well
them.
taken. And also, like when new graduate students arrive quite often, I see that even in my own department, even today, they try to look for the advisors who are really nice, friendly, who are like, so I believe that that's the wrong way to choose an advisor because you're only there for 4 or 5 years, right? You're not marrying.
Hmm.
It is just you're there for the education, right? And so, what if the person is not the best human being, but he's an accomplished master, right?
Hmm.
Go learn the tricks of the
Hmm.
game. Okay, that's what is going to guide you, right?
That's that's a very interesting take indeed. So uh, in your PhD program, right? So like as a grad student, and I think those things are kind of timeless, as you said. So as a grad student, one thing which I'm hearing from you is when choosing advisors, look for people who are accomplished, who know the trade very well, and learn from them. Um, I'm assuming getting a DSc at MIT is not a cakewalk. Were there times when you found yourself stressed, and if so, how did you handle that?
No, IIT had prepared very well. Okay, so that's one thing I would have to say about the IITs. Okay, I
Okay.
think I think we folks can work any institution in the world anywhere. Okay, I have to tell you that. A lot of great teachers, the teachers about whom I had read in books, right?
Hmm.
And then suddenly I was sitting in the class
Hmm.
taking lectures from them. I still remember Linus Pauling visited and giving a seminar and
Oh my
listening
God.
to him. Okay, and some of the famous chemical engineers of all time, like Sherwood, Lewis, they're all there. Like it was a place to be, right? And you think you wanted to get intimidated? Quite the contrary. Okay, quite the contrary. Like you feel inspired, you feel taken away off your feet by them. Okay, you see them, and what you realize, the biggest thing I realized, they are
Mhm.
human beings just like you and me.
That's so true.
Prior to that, they were like gods, right? You read their books, you read the equations from them, and you say, wow, who are these individuals, right? And so one of the big things which happened to me after going to MIT was, and sitting in those classrooms and listening to those professors, I realized it can be done. You know, these what differentiated them from the rest of the normal human beings was that they were inspired, they were dedicated, they wanted to solve some impactful problem for the human race. Like, that's what differentiated, and they were really they worked very hard, right? And as against just wasting away their lives. So there were few things you observe them and you realize that otherwise they were just no different. They were
That
no
is,
different. And so and the other thing, the same thing which I told you about IIT was also true for MIT, like in the sense that you're again surrounded by some of the smartest folks which are around, and you make really friends with them, right?
mhm.
And they remain friends for the rest of your life too. And so I do believe that surrounding with a good company is very very important, because it tells you what you could become, by
That is. I'm so happy to see this kind of trend where the IITs prepared you for the kind of stresses, but also having these good colleagues. I also like your from intimidation to inspiration kind of a switch with meeting these people. I'm hoping that people who are watching this video now, who are maybe a little intimidated by you and somebody at your stature, will hopefully get inspired and follow in your footsteps. Uh,
absolutely.
that said, again, your PhD was what 44 years ago. You've had a stellar career since then. Tell us a little more about that. 1980, you get your sorry, not a PhD, your DSc,
Yeah.
and then.
Yeah, then I just actually then I went to to Air Products and Chemicals. It was the engineering company. Like my advisor was disappointed with me because he
Mhm.
wanted me to go to some big research company rather than just what he considered an engineering company. But hey, it turned out to be great, because the it was just the right time to be there, because unknown to me, semiconductor industry, all these big fabs were being built, Intel, Samsung, and all those things, and Texas Instrument, Motorola, like, and they suddenly came to gas companies asking for gases which should have impurities less than parts per billion, parts per trillion. That means, like, you can imagine, like, that one molecule in 10 to the 9 molecules.
Wow.
And air is very dirty that way, because it has a lot of krypton, xenon, carbon dioxide, like, and hydrogen, and they're all in parts per million. And before that, no one bothered about them. They would still call them very pure, because they are pure, like, parts per million. But as you know, in the semiconductor industry, like, now that I make myself semiconducting devices, like I make solar cell, which is a PN junction really, and
Mm-hmm.
LEDs. And so what happens is we dope them, right? We dope them
Yeah,
to the
yeah,
concentration of 10 to the power
yeah.
14 to the power 15, 16, right?
And you have to control that
Per
doping
centimeter cube,
concentrations.
right? And so if you look at 10 to the power 16, that is actually 10 to the power minus 9, right? Okay. So if you think to get, so what looked clean was dirty,
Yeah.
and there were multiple things. And so the question was, how do you purify it? How do you sell it? And people were struggling all over in all the gas companies. And as a young engineer, I had no baggage. I was not biased with any technology, so I could sit down and say, okay, where the troubles are. And then I envisioned some of the very simple schemes by just hanging one distillation column on in one case, another one, making really these gases which were extremely pure, like 10 to the minus 9, 10 to the minus 10 type of impurities. And immediately Air Products found itself selling them, because others were still catching up, right? And so if you see in those 5 to 10 years, Air Products really got 40 to 50% of the world market on electronic gases by virtue of that. So developed processes to purify NF3, oxygen, nitrogen, arsen, like, well, there was a lot of things which came out. And so it just happened to be at the right place, right time. That's what how I would put it. And that time, like, almost all the fab sites were using it, and therefore, like, billions of chips were made using these gases, which came out of the processes which I was part of. And then, yeah, so it was a so sometimes you get into a mature technology, but you do not know what is coming along the pike, right?
Uh-huh.
And that's what happened. And
That is so fascinating. I think many people don't quite realize that the microchips revolution that happened was so deeply founded, well, on chemistry and chemical engineering, and not just the chemistry part of it, but the engineering part of it, of how do you actually get those ultra pure
Yeah,
gases to then do the depositions and to build the actual
very
chips
true.
in fabs.
Yeah.
And yes, those of you who are watching who want to pursue more in the harder sciences, if you will, as opposed to the softer stuff like the stuff I've been doing on the software side and computer science, don't lose hope. There's a whole bunch of difficult problems to be solved over there.
Yeah, we need both. We need both.
Indeed.
Okay.
That particular synergy would be really
Yeah,
important.
but unknown to me that time, I must complete the story that when I came to Purdue so many years later,
Mhm.
I did not know that I will be working in semiconductors myself very aggressively, and that's what has happened now. So I have a much deeper appreciation of what theories and what things are needed because you know we will
That's
talk
good.
later, but
Yes,
we
exactly, because that route actually takes us through biomass and stuff. So tell us a little more about how
okay.
that switch came around from building
Yeah, so I
chips
think
to other gases, if you will.
yeah, so I think the last thing I did at airports, which was in fact was this world's largest LNG plants because natural gas has to move around, and so the processes I built, like things which me and my team developed, like still is the after all these years after I have left more than 24 years, it still is the process which is being built. So I continue to be amazed by that. But yeah, but what happened was when I was at Air Products, like for 24 years, all these gases, liquefactions, and Purdue approached me suddenly one day and asked me that, okay, would you like to, come to Purdue as a distinguished professor? And at first I thought they were kidding because, why would you hire someone from industry to
Hmm.
come to academia? And that too with tenured position
Hmm. Hmm.
and this strange thing. But they were serious, and after I thought they were serious, I said, okay, I will take this position. And then what happened was at the same time, Air Products had the CTO of Air Products at that time had asked me to do a study for Air Products to see what are the emerging trends in different technological and society, and to recommend to Air Products chairman like what areas the Air Products should be working on. So I took 4 months kind of sabbatical within Air Products,
Hmm.
and I read some journals like futuristic journals which I did not know even existed, and then I wrote a report on what things will emerge: energy, water, video games, and so forth. And so I wrote all that. I presented it. It was very well received, but it depressed me after 6 months because the reason
Okay,
it depressed me was I suddenly realized that the world was more beautiful out there than I was within the Air Products. Okay,
I see.
there was more things to be done. Okay, and energy caught my attention because I told myself, this is something which is really big going to happen. The human race will transit. Okay, so what happened after we packed everything in our van and we are driving from Pennsylvania on Pennsylvania Turnpike from
Hmm.
Allentown to Purdue. On the way, my wife asked me, Manju asked me, okay, so what are you going to do now? What are you going to work on? Right. So I said, yeah, that's very interesting. What am I going to work on? Okay, I'm going to have a clean sheet of paper.
Uh-huh.
I can work on anything I want. Then I said, okay, I'm going to work on solar energy, and everything is related with solar energy because I see that as an emerging, trend.
Hmm.
And then she asked me, what do you know about solar energy? And I said, I
Uh-huh.
have nothing. Okay, my knowledge of physics is zero. Okay, and then she said, okay, but you see, as a startup package, if Purdue gave me X amount of dollars, right?
Hmm.
Okay, to spend. And so I took that X amount of dollars, hired a graduate student, and I have to tell you this story because this is really interesting.
Uh-huh.
So that graduate student, and he came and I said, we'll make solar cells. Okay, we'll make nanoparticles, we'll make inks, and we'll print solar cells. And solar cells is a semiconducting device. It is a PN junction,
Hmm.
okay, with the charge carriers. He looked at me and said, okay, fair enough. Okay, what should we do now? Okay. I said, you know what we will do? We will take a course in solid state physics in the
Uh-huh.
physics department across first semester. You do nothing, I do nothing. We'll take courses together.
Oh my God.
So we took the courses. I learned all about the Fermi levels and valence band edge,
Uh-huh.
conduction band edge, carrier concentrations, mobilities, all those things. Second semester came along and he asked me, okay, Professor, well, let's go to the lab, make the solar cell. No, no. I said, nope, you will take yet another course. Okay.
Wow.
And you will take a solid state devices in electrical engineering. Okay. So he and I went together. We took solid state devices, learned about everything which you need to know to make any transistor or any device. Okay.
Hmm.
And so we did homeworks together. Okay. He and I. Okay. But I never took exams with him because I was afraid if I get less marks than him, then, then he will never trust me as
I
an
feel like I'll
advisor.
have to interview your student now to understand how it felt to go to class with your advisor.
And then we went to the lab and we started making semiconducting nanoparticles, devices, and so forth. And that rest is history. Like today, my group is very well known around the globe for making solar cells. But biomass, coming back to your original question, so there was yet another graduate student, Navneet Singh, and this is it's important to know there because he came and he told me that he wants to do modeling with me because of my background in air products. And I said, I'm no longer interested in it. I don't want to do it. And he said, no, and then he insisted. He basically insisted. He said, can you let me work with you just for a year? And that's it. Okay. And I said, okay, fair enough. Okay. And then for a year, he started with coal. Okay. Coal, Fischer-Tropsch, making liquids, chemicals. Okay. Then one day I told him, you know what? Biomass is such an important product of the solar energy, right? Okay. And biomass is recovered with a very poor efficiency, like 1% for efficiency overall. Solar cells are like 20% efficient, biomass is 1% efficient. But it does one thing very important. It takes carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, which is at 400, that time it was less than 400 parts per million. And it gives us a dense form of carbon, right? Literally, okay?
It's true.
And so even though the efficiency is poor, it is doing a very important job of siphoning very dilute carbon dioxide, which is entropically very unfavorable, right? So let's imagine the processes where we can take the biomass, convert it to liquid fuel or chemical, while retaining all the carbon in the biomass. We will not release even a single biomass carbon to the atmosphere back. And to that point in time, back in 2005, no chemical processes existed like that. Okay. So if you make ethanol, for example, from sugar, okay, most of the carbon, nearly half to 60% of the carbon is released to the atmosphere, okay, back as CO2, okay. So it's very common to take a biomass and make chemicals where a lot of carbon is released to the atmosphere back. And I told my student, we will not do that. Let's imagine processes which will retain every carbon which comes with biomass, because if I wanted that carbon again from the atmosphere, people talk about direct air capture today from atmosphere. It's very energy intensive.
Yeah.
Extremely energy intensive. And Mother Nature has already done that. So why are we wasting our time, right? So let's do the other way, right? So we started using solar energy or wind energy and get electricity and make hydrogen and come up with new process, S2 bio-oil, S2 car, okay, which could convert every atom of carbon to liquid fuels. And we set up from modeling, we went to the lab, we set up the reactors, we came up with the catalysts, we proved the concepts, okay? And a lot of companies are following that, actually. They're developing it for commercial purposes. But I have moved on, now I'm focusing more on solar cells and decarbonization of the entire chemical manufacturing sector.
So let's actually go down those paths one by one. Regarding solar cells, when we were discussing, you told me a very nice story about the inspirations you got in terms of a very interesting way of deploying solar cells in harmony, if you will, with nature. If you could share this with our audience.
Yeah, so what happened was back in 2015, I remember, my wife and I were taking vacation in the state of Kerala, and we visited tea gardens, Munnar Hills, which a lot of Indians do, and it's one of the most beautiful sights you can be, by the way. Okay, and I'm standing there watching it, very beautiful, serene, totally lost into it. And then suddenly I realized, wait a minute, if these guys wanted electricity or energy, they can't get it because there's no way to put PV panels there, because if it did, the plants will die underneath. Okay. So I told Manju that, hey, you know what? Too bad these guys can't use photovoltaics, right? They can't use, because I was doing photovoltaics research naturally, and the conversation stopped right there. And then on the return flight from New Delhi to Newark, New Jersey, I could not sleep on the entire flight. I had this pad of paper. I was drawing all through the trip. I was drawing different configurations, which could split solar spectrum, which could do this, that. And I had by the time I landed and reached back home here, West Lafayette, I had a whole stack of sheets of paper to, which could be built and the agricultural could be done. But you see, it has an agriculture component, which again, I have no knowledge of agriculture at that point in time. The knowledge was zero, right? Okay. but that did not daunt me. This is another lesson for young people, like, go find people with whom you can collaborate, who are really good, right? So that's what I did. I went to agriculture department. Purdue is very big in agricultural engineering, being a land grant institution. And so I met 2, 3 individuals there. One very accomplished individual, he agreed, agronomist, agreed to collaborate. We got together, okay, and raised a lot of money through writing proposals, okay. And we built a real PV farm with the same farm intensity as done on a real farm. Okay. So we use the same combined harvesters, we put the same seeds, and these are the tracking solar panels, the dynamic shadows are moving, and we have collected the data like from those corn and soybean, and we have developed the plant models, we have developed the shadow models, we have developed the PV models. We are optimizing the entire enterprise to, both from the economic aspects and of the food point, because we really don't want to hurt the food that much. Okay. So that's how it was born. Like, it was totally born on the whole thing was born from a vacation.
That is,
while admiring Mother Nature.
When was this vacation? What year?
2015, like, it was the winter time, and so my wife and I, we do take vacations to India time to time, because because both of us left when we were really young in India, so we really haven't, now have seen a lot of India, but had not seen that much India. So it was very natural, for us, it is always like, let's go see this part of the India now, like. So.
That is very nice. If you don't mind, I'm going to pull you back in time a little bit, because we have already reached 2015 on this one. Take us back to 2010 and the medal that you were awarded with. I mean, you have a very, very long list of honors. It'll be a whole hour if we just make a long list over here. But this is focusing on the National Medal of Technology Innovation. It is, as an IITian, as an Indian, it's a matter of great pride for me, of course, to see you get there. I'm sure it was a nice honor for you as well. Tell us a little more about how
it was
that
a big surprise. It was to be honest, I had really not never thought that that could happen. So it was a big surprise, but nevertheless, like, when it came, I think it was a moment of joy after the surprise passed by. And it was even a bigger joy because my father was still alive that time, and he came from India, like, and he and Manju and my both sons with Navid, like, we all went to White House and together, and we spent a couple of hours there. Of course, met Obama, like, chatted with him, like, it was a wonderful experience, and I think just because the family was there, I think it became even more relevant to me more than anything else, because seeing the joy in my father's eyes was what nothing could be worth that, actually, to be honest with you. Like, I still, so that's probably the most vivid aspect of that medal, which I will always remember for the rest of my life. And it was a big surprise. I still believe that. But yeah, it just happened.
That is great. And once again, a moment of great pride for all of us. And I'm very happy to hear that your father, who all those years ago got you to go into chemical engineering, he got a nice ROI at the end of this whole process.
Yeah, he forced me to go to IIT.
I know. That's
I
right.
had good desire.
He forced you to go to IIT. He forced you to take chemical engineering as opposed to electrical engineering. And then so many years later, it comes back. It's such a great thing. In terms of the whole farm stuff that you've been up to, has there already been technology transfer? Are there already companies and startups coming up?
So there's a company which came, like, so there are a lot of companies which are contacting us, of course, and a lot of farmers are contacting us, because now this has become a big topic, right? So when we started, it was not, but it has now. And so what has happened is we are being contacted with a lot of farmers whom we are passing things. We are working with economists. We are doing a lot of economic analysis. We are publishing papers on that. A lot of companies are approaching us, and with the collaboration with one of the companies, like, we are building a big, what do you call that? Yet another bigger facility, actually. And that company is the one which are putting half of the money. And
wow, nice.
And it is a company with PV installing company, like, so it installs PV on the agrivoltaic farm. So yes, the answer is yes. Like, there are a lot of companies with whom we are in conversation with, and even in collaboration with, and advising a lot of farmers too. And so it's something which is blossoming, actually.
That is excellent. I'm very happy to hear that. And in terms of its international presence, because as you said, the idea came to you in part with the challenge you saw when you were in India. There's so many parts of the world where being able to combine PVs with agriculture without impacting one or the other is so valuable. Have you already seen this being deployed globally?
Yeah, so globally, yes, every place like so India is looking into it too. A lot of places in India are looking for that because PV will require a lot of land, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And to because the solar energy is in some sense is very dilute, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise we all would get burned. So
That's
so
true.
as a human being, it is very good. It is very dilute.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of it, but then that means we require large PV area, photovoltaic area, right?
Mm-hmm.
To harness to collect the solar energy. And since we require large areas, so what that means that literally translates into large land area.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at the human race, like over the years, most of the land is agricultural land,
Mm-hmm.
right? If there's an empty land, we grow agriculture.
It's true.
So there's really no land for putting empty land to put PV, okay?
Mm-hmm.
At the scale we want.
Correct.
That's you can always find small pieces of land where you can put
Well,
PV.
living in the American West, I would disagree a little bit, given how we have so much desert stuff. That
Yeah,
said, I agree.
desert you can,
Easily
desert you
accessible
can.
land.
Yeah,
Easily
desert,
accessible
yes.
land is already
Yeah.
arable, which we have already grown fields
Yeah,
in.
on the
You're right.
desert, yes, okay, but as you move towards population centers, okay,
Yes.
it does become challenges. I totally agree. Okay, and that's where I think the question is like, can the food and energy coexist?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And if we can create systems where they can coexist, then we'll solve one of the big problems of the humans, going forward.
So, so far, Rakesh, this has been a great story. And yet, I know that your most recent interest is stark different from agri and PV aspects. It's about electricity replacing chemistry in so many places in manufacturing of chemicals and such. So tell us a little more about this. How did that come about in your radar?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So like 6, 7 years ago, I started to, of course, the Tesla cars were coming and the electrification of whether internal combustion engines were taking place. And so I began to think like, if we really start getting, renewable electrons, right, like from solar
Mm-hmm.
and wind, and the chemical manufacturing is, highly CO2 polluting, because we combust a lot of fossils while making ethylenes and propylenes and so forth, and hydrogens. And so could we do it using electrons? Okay. And that led to what I call electrification of chemical manufacturing, and it was not a very simple thing in the sense that you just don't go and replace the natural gas with a Joule heating, put a
Mm-hmm.
heater and replace it, because that would be a very poor way of doing it,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not like cooking at home where you were using natural gas and now you replace that with the resistive coil to
Mm-hmm.
provide the heat, but reimagining the entire thing. Okay? Because now with the flow of electrons, you could provide energy where it is needed locally at the
Mm-hmm.
microscopic level for
Wow.
the reactions, as against heating the reactor tubes from outside.
Uh-huh.
And you can vary the energy you are giving, and you can supply whenever you need and whatever intensity you need. So it just opened a whole new, what I call a clean sheet of paper, okay, to reimagine. And that's what my group is doing now. So we have really come up with some really neat reactor designs for really highly energy consuming processes, where now what we do is in the reactor tubes, we put the resistive coils right inside the tube rather than outside the tube, and provide the heat exactly at 40 with the catalyst and do the reaction right on the surfaces, and so forth. So
That
so
is
what that
fascinating.
does is equipment size shrinks by a factor of 10 to 100. Okay, so what was really humongous becomes small, and the
Because you're
process
not
is
depending on convection or conduction to take the heat to the place where it needs to
yeah,
be.
no, you directly provide where it is needed, because it's just the flow of electricity. You just put where it is needed, right? Okay. And the same thing you could use, so I have not developed any process yet with using microwaves or, all those
Mm-hmm.
waves and lasers.
Mm-hmm.
You could do that too, because you can put it
Yeah,
again.
because to me, it's like replacing a classic chulha with a microwave. Like it's a very
Yeah,
different
exactly.
paradigm of
It's
looking at it.
analogous to that, right? Exactly. Classic, but more than that now.
Yeah.
It's a really what I call suddenly
That,
you have a clean sheet of paper, and so the unit operations are just even the separation processes, even some of the very traditional separation processes as distillation are changing totally. Like, their energy consumption is going down to 10% of what they used to be. Okay.
10%.
Plummeting. Yeah, they're plummeting absolutely because of the use of electricity.
That is
And to me, that has been absolutely what I call, yeah, it's an exciting moment.
it's revolutionary. I mean, so
Yeah,
tell us a little more about, can you give me some examples of specific chemical engineering processes or specific chemicals which are produced or now producible using these
yeah,
techniques?
yeah. So, like for example, like ethane to ethylene, okay,
Mhm.
is a big thing, right? Polyethylene, polypropylene. This is the cracking of naphtha, like
That's true.
and it is done in big furnaces, like humongous furnaces, like like furnaces which are like 80 to 100 feet tall, and it's occupied a big block. The big flames which are burning, and the tubes are really long and so forth. And but this thing is going to cut the size, as I said, by 1/50th to 1/80th, like because now the ability to provide heat where it is needed, and uh, and also we can design reactors, which I found out like 2 3 years ago, is which can do the load falling, which is a very difficult job to do in the normal reactor designs, because once you heat the tube is heated. So if power goes down to 20%, because the variable electricity,
Hmm.
because wind and PV are not steady
That's true.
state supply, right?
That's true.
So if it goes down, you can't turn the reactor down. The
That's
normal
true.
reactors cannot be turned down. They have to be run at steady state.
Mhm.
But the use of electricity, like by properly designing, you can design ethane to ethylene, which can be turned down, turned up very conveniently, right? And so, and then again, hydrogen production with the steam methane reforming from methane to hydrogen, same thing, very high energy consumer. Okay, and that's also actually the companies like BSF and SABIC who are building these electrically heated reactors. Okay, and but their electrically heated reactors are a little different than what my group is doing.
Yeah.
But that's the beauty of the whole thing, right? We all have a different take on it.
Hmm.
We all are doing a different research, and let's see who wins in the end, right? So that's
Indeed. And
how I look at it.
for me,
So
what's interesting is that I'm hearing an analogy to what you're working on right now, to where perhaps your story started post PhD. This is an emerging field.
yeah, yeah,
Everything
exactly.
is about to change.
Yes, exactly. That's So for what I consider 20, 25 years of boring period of the chemical engineering is about to change. It is totally, it's on its head now. Okay. And so for the younger generation, I think this is the best time to be like, go invent, find new ways to make chemicals and be energetically efficient, be environmentally friendly, no CO2 release, right? Okay.
And
And do it economically at the same time. That's the biggest constraint. Huh?
and what's fascinating to me is, like, thanks to the kind of path that folks like yourselves have shown, it actually seems kind of possible to do all of these things at the same time,
Yeah, absolutely.
as
Absolutely.
opposed to having this kind of a false dichotomy to say you can either save money or save the environment.
Yeah.
Maybe you
That's
can do
correct.
both.
No, that's correct. And all it requires is some creative imaginations and some creative solutions. Okay. And the ability to say that, yes, it can be done. I think that's the
That
so
is that is great. If you don't mind, I'm going to zoom out a little bit more and go into a slightly, perhaps a more advisory mode in this conversation. Speaking to your fresh PhD self, if you will, or upcoming fresh PhD students who are about to finish their PhD, they have gone through their grueling years, they have learned at the feet of their advisors and written the papers and whatnot, and are about to get their PhDs. I remember when I was about to get my PhD, some of the younger faculty had told me, saying, "Oh yeah, you want to go into academia? The odds of getting your proposal accepted is 10 times worse than the odds of getting your papers accepted." Generally speaking, I was like, "Oh my God." They're like, "Yeah, it'll be fun." So there were those things that I remember, the stress of my time, like figuring out that until PhD life was still on a rail. You publish papers, you're done. Then it opens up a little too crazy. So what would you like to say to people who are about to finish their PhDs
yeah.
or
So
maybe
people
have
are
just
about to
started?
finish. So I have so the way I look at it is like I think getting writing proposals and getting money is a good thing. Okay, like I think it is good for the soul, because when you're writing a proposal, you have to sell your stuff to someone else. And what that does is that forces one to rethink, and sharpen, as you to use your earlier statement, sharpen yourself, right? sharpen your ideas. Okay, so and given today's environment, I think you can always get money to do research. Okay, like if you are at it and you believe in it. So yep, it might take 2, 3 tries. Okay, but in the end, so I would not say the students should get discouraged by the mere fact that they have to write proposal if they are interested in academia. That is okay. So the first and the foremost thing then basically comes down to is what a student is interested in from their life.
Mm-hmm.
Or they want to be a practical contributor, just the way I was for the first 20 plus years of my life, okay, where you are coming with things, you can see them being built, right? And the customers are getting the products, okay? If that's what excites you, then that's the way to go, okay? And but on the other hand, if discovery excites you, if finding address solution to a grand challenge of our era, okay, excites you, if you want to tell the world what you're doing more freely, because if you're working in industry, then whatever you do, it's not that you don't do great work, you do great work, but it's confined to the walls of that industry. On the other hand, if you want to share your knowledge with the rest of the world and you want to freely exchange and build with each other and build a collaboration at the global scale rather than collaboration within a company, okay, then academia is for you. Okay, so don't get discouraged by funding, or as you were yourself in academia for a while. And so you know how exciting it could be. And by that token, even industrial work is very exciting. So I'm not trying to say that one is more exciting than the other, but I think what it boils down to is that the graduate students have to know what excites them personally, okay? And they're very distinct jobs, okay? However, if you're excited by the idea of discovery and sharing with others and so forth, don't get de-excited by the challenges of raising money. That was my point.
That's a very fair point. Those are table stakes. You better be willing to do that. One of my mentors had said in academics, you spend half your time doing research, half your time raising money, and half your time teaching.
Yeah.
And we were all joking about how
it's pretty hard work.
About it. And although the math doesn't add up, of course, but that was the point, that teaching is also part of it. And
yeah, as in fact, my biggest thing is be a good teacher first, before anything. If you're a faculty member, the first and the foremost thing is, in my mind at least, okay, is I love teaching personally. And I think be a good teacher, okay, because teachers inspire individuals. You're touching lives of men, okay, and be a great teacher, okay, and and the teaching is not only the classroom teaching, mind you, okay, the teaching is classroom teaching and teaching through research.
that's true.
Okay. You're basically teaching graduate students how to do research, how to find a problem,
how to write papers, how to read.
Yeah, exactly. Even how to write proposals. I use my smart graduate students to help me to write proposals also, because I'm training them. It's done intentionally because I'm trying to train them what it takes to write a good proposal. So yeah, so being a good teacher is a foremost. Okay, so your point is extremely well taken, Animesh.
That's good to know. And hey, people who are about to graduate from their PhDs, I can also tell you, what's interesting here is, Rakesh, you have spent time in the industry and in academia. And sometimes people who are at these critical junctures of their lives, let's say about to graduate their PhD, they may feel that this one decision they're going to take is irreparable. It's either fork left or fork right. And that's actually not true, it seems.
Yeah, it gets so okay. So once you finish and you join industry, the first 4 or 5 years is easy to come back to academia. Okay, because you haven't really, you'll acquire a lot of skills in industry, but you have really not spent too much time there. And the academia will welcome you back because you already have that knowledge. Okay. Especially for certain industries, they would love to have you, right? Okay. And on the other hand, if you do spend a lot of time in industry, just the way I did it, like 20 plus years, okay, then it kind of starts to become more challenging because first of all, because if you have not published, then the academia doesn't know how to gauge you.
That's true.
Because no matter how smart you are, they really, and in my case, I was very lucky. I had published few papers, I think.
And I think that's the key thing too. I was going to ask you, like, how did Purdue or your sponsors at Purdue, how did they convince you? Is it because you were publishing papers and getting patents and such, or how did they know yet you would fit in academia?
Yeah, that's very true. So I think, first of all, like, so in late 90s, I became very active in American Institute of Chemical Engineers. I started presenting papers there. I published papers. Okay. And then I got elected to National Academy of Engineering, which also got them academia looking at me that, okay, this guy might have something. And but the key thing is the publications, like, you need to be visible outside the fences of your industry. Okay. Because we are not visible outside the fences. So when I was at Air Products, one of the directors of Science Center had advised me that, Rakesh, no matter how smart you are, you should have an umbrella for a rainy day. Okay. And asked him, what do you mean by umbrella for a rainy day? He said, in your career, you will always you may one day find reporting to a boss who really don't know you, okay, who doesn't care about your skills. Okay. What are you going to do that day? Okay. And he told me the only way you can overcome that is by periodically publishing at least one paper a year. Okay. And that was the advice given to me in the early 90s. And I took that very seriously. I said, okay, fair enough. I will start publishing a paper every year. Okay. And paper of substance, not just random some paper. Okay? And so I worked in my own free time, like evenings and weekends and all those things. And so would get a patent, then I would take that patent. If I like that patent from it, and then I would develop into a fundamental idea, do a more theoretical analysis of that, okay, which industry doesn't care really. And then I would submit to journals and I published it. And then I went to ASHE meetings and presented them, and that way people get to know me. And so my suggestion to people who are in industry, and if they ever want to go to academia, would be is make yourself visible. Okay. And,
make yourself visible.
Okay. And also start doing some networking in your own professional organization. Okay. People who can connect you and who can see your knowledge, right? Okay.
That's actually, I'm going to stay on that topic for just a little moment, because sometimes, having been an academic myself, we may end up developing a very puritanical view of this, to be like, oh, no, I am so smart. I publish papers, end of story. I don't have to volunteer to be program chair for a conference or be in the editorial staff or a reviewer for journals, because I'm just so good. I publish papers. That is not how people get to know you. That's not how you make those connections. In fact, you have jumped your verticals so much over time. I'm assuming it's because you got to know people who were doing research in agriculture,
absolutely,
or biomass.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I support you 100%. I think having a view that you sit in your own ivory tower and publishing, and therefore you are unique. I think those days are gone. Okay, I think today's research is very interdisciplinary. Okay. I just gave you an example of my own Vortex. I had to go across the campus, okay, knock on 3 doors, and then one person agreed to work with me, right? And we are great collaborators today, like Ms. Toenstra and I are perfect partners. Wonderful. And so gone are the days, even in solar cells, where I'm making nanoparticles, thin films, and making new materials. There's so many analytical techniques, which I don't want to go to take yet another course to learn it, right? Okay. All right. So how do I look deeper in the atoms and learn, what are the bondings and, what are the clusters? And so I have collaborators going all the way to in Europe, many collaborators in Europe, with like in Spain, in Switzerland, in Germany. I send them the samples, some of the latest techniques they have developed, they analyze, they tell me, yeah, you think it is this, but you have some vacancies, some atoms are missing here.
Nice.
So what I'm saying is that time is different. It's totally different era, right? No one can be a master of, and therefore collaboration is a must. Okay. And I think to solve an impactful problem of the society today, that should be the focus, right? We are engineers, okay? I'm not a scientist, okay? I'm an engineer, and an engineer's job is to solve problems for the society.
And for the society, and I would like to point out here that those are also very difficult problems.
Yeah, absolutely, equally difficult. Yeah,
it's not like it's the easy stuff.
Yeah, and those are the grand challenges of our era, like water, energy, drugs, medicines, like environment, like there's so many challenges, right? And so this is the exciting time. And you talked about vertical pillars. I think that's a very good, another great observation you have made, because if I find myself doing the same subject for more than 6, 7 years, I get
Mhm.
itchy because
Mhm.
because what that means is I'm stale now, right? Because you want to do something, change it, okay?
Mhm.
Because one of the biggest mistakes people make in academia is you make one big discovery, okay,
Mhm.
and then you start nibbling at the edges of it,
Mhm.
okay? And you just keep following it forever. But the law of diminishing return has set in by
That's
that
true.
time.
That's true.
Okay? All right. The time has come to jump the boat, look for something new, okay, rather than
So,
because academia, this is what happens. Like most of us would make one big impact and then spend the rest of the life on that. But the smart ones don't do that. Smart ones don't do that.
that is very wise. And at the same time, as you told me about the story of the gentleman who came to you and said, I still need your skill from the industry to do
Yeah,
more biomass work.
yeah,
You haven't forgotten your past work. And if there's
yeah,
something
yeah,
net new,
absolutely.
that'll still come to you. That is amazing. I'd like to bring it all the way back then to your IIT days or current IITians, if you will. To the girl or the guy who is currently, let's say, in IIT Kanpur chemical engineering and is wondering, okay, I joined this because my father asked me to, or because this was my rank, or because I like chemistry. I am now watching Professor Rakesh Agrawal talking on this video. That guy is God. Of course, he's built
No,
of
no,
some
those
other
are
crazy
great.
material. What are 2 or 3 things that that girl can do as a
Yeah,
student right now
I, I,
to
I think
excel?
the biggest thing in life is to find what excites you. Okay, no matter what others tell you around you. Okay, like even in my case, my father didn't want me to be electrical engineer, but hey, I'm making solar cells. Doing all kind of optoelectronic characterizations in my lab, which you can think of, from measuring impedances to external
That's
quantum
true.
efficiencies to optic, yeah, all the optical photoluminescence. It's all physics and electrical engineering, right? So, and that's the beauty of today, right? The things are very interdisciplinary. Okay, like there's no one gone are the era of one department being, electrical engineering is no longer transformers and things, and civil engineering is no longer bridges. Okay,
Mhm.
times for all that is gone. Okay, so don't worry what who people are telling you about. Okay, have faith in yourself. See what excites you. Okay, and because what I found is something which excites me, then I don't feel tired while doing it.
That's so true.
Okay, so that's not work anymore. That's more like a hobby, right?
Uh-huh.
so
Uh-huh.
so
Hey, I'm
so
getting paid for your hobby. That's a good thing to have.
absolutely. How lucky can you be, right? So I think that's what I would advise them. Like, find what catches your imagination and what would excite you, and go after that with your full energy. Okay? And that's the main thing, more than
Wonderful.
anything else, I think.
Wonderful. Well, Rakesh, Professor Agrawal, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today, and for sharing your story and your wisdom with fellow alumni from IITs and indeed the world. I look forward to, well, hearing more from you and other academics. This is kind of a big beginning of our series as part of PanIIT USA to get started showcasing our distinguished alumni who have spent time in academia, perhaps also in industry, to show what all IITians can be. Thank you so
Okay.
much once again.
Thank you, Animesh. It has been truly a pleasure to chat with you here, and it brought a lot of old memories. And thank you very much for that.